Welcome back. We are joined again by Stanislav Krapivnik, Russian-born, former U.S. Army officer. So thank you for coming back on the program. I be wanting to ask you about what is changing in this war. One gets the impression that something is definitely changing. That is, there's targeting of, well, I guess more specific logistics. We see that is both sides targeting bridges, more the energy infrastructure, obviously still, but even the petrol stations now. I'm curious how effective that is. And furthermore, just to expand on the question, we see Kiev was attacked in a huge way, according to Kiev's mayor, Klitschko. This was the most powerful attack on Kiev during the whole war. I was just wondering if you could speak to some of these military decisions, the way you see them
hmm
being currently made.
Yeah. For Klitschko, I've got one thing to say. Hold my beer. It's about to get worse. It's only going to get worse. Look, I just got back myself on Tuesday from the Donbass, so I traveled about 2,500 kilometers round trip. The uh, there is there a more difficult position than getting fuel? Yes, there is. Is there no fuel in Russia? No, there is. That's not true. There is fuel. Um, you'll probably wind up having to stay in the line to get it, but then it also depends. On average, you're saying anywhere from 10 minutes to maybe an hour. Some places you just pop right in. It's hard to tell. It's hit or miss. Some of this is people hoarding. Some of this is companies hoarding and then trying to resell. Um, Two guys got busted. 20 and 21-year-old driving around in a van. They had about 900 liters of E95 fuel that apparently they bought under the table and were planning on selling off somewhere. They got busted on that. Um, but there's we came back. It's obviously more difficult when you're outside the cities than in the cities, because the cities, you get much more logistics. Outside the cities, there's a lot less logistics. Um, so there's more, particularly the mom and pop stores. They don't have fuel because they buy from the big guys like Gazprom or Rosneft or Lukoil, but they get what's left after those guys deliver to all of their own stores. And out in the countryside, on the interstates, it's harder to fill up because it's further away from the big cities. Oh, excuse me. I haven't recovered quite totally from Tuesday. I've been running nonstop since I landed. It's a long drive, obviously. Now, you get down to Voronezh, there are no lines in Voronezh. There's enough fuel everywhere. So it's very different areas. Lugansk also didn't have a line. Have one car ahead of me. I won't call that a line. Uh, Donetsk is in a hard way. It's the fuel there next door over, but the fuel there is low quality, sucking out from the bottom with all the sediment. Um, it varies. It varies very very much from place to place. Like I said, there is fuel. There's some fuel. There's some price gouging too. Some particularly small mom and pop stores. Some are spiking their prices a lot. I'm not quite sure what the government's going to do about it because there's normally laws against something like that in an emergency situation. But we'll see. Sberbank apparently, I just found out from one of my kids. Sberbank apparently now has a program to find fuel in your area. So you have to go driving around looking from one station to another. What happens is, some of these gas stations, they get topped off, and then everybody rushes in there. They buy up, and yes, there's also panic buying. People. Right now, I think a lot of places have put a hold to that. You can't fill up containers. Um, which is a problem because I need to go fill up a couple liters in a container so I can for lawnmower, but other places are releasing like volumes like 20 or 30 liters at a time. Some places have a quota system. Get a line and not a quota system, but a queue. Get a line, take a number, and come back when it's your turn. So it's different things in different areas. There's no one unified plan. But to say Russia is collapsing, people are marching on the streets, and all the other silliness that we're used to from the Western media, well, it's more the same. It's the Vladimir Putin that is dying from 150 diseases, but yet has invested $28 billion into living forever, is now immortal. And all in the same sentence. So that's the reality of it. Well, the other reality of it is drones, particularly the Palantir drones that have come out. And what that programming on these drones, these are relatively short range drones for airplane type drones. They're not that big, and they're made to take out cars, military trucks, buses. Grandma in her little car driving to the market. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. As long as they're killing somebody. These Palantir drones. I mean, Thiel's a war criminal. Let's just begin with this. He's a terrorist and a war criminal. The logic they're using is first 80% of the first 80% of the charge. The AI is looking for military type targets. After that, the last 20, it's looking for anything that's moving. So we were driving at night because there was a lot fewer drones. But the drone detector, you could still tell there are 4 drones in the air, 3 to 4 drones constantly. Ours or theirs, you can't tell. The drone detector doesn't tell. It tells you the distance and how many drones in the area. So that's the reality. The Russian military has adapted very quickly to it. They went Mad Max. So all these old Bukhankas, they cut out the back end. Then they took a bunch of other cars, especially the hatchbacks, took the hatchbacks out, mounted a weapons point on there, and put machine guns. And these Mad Max machine gun cars are now escorting all the trucks. Usually 1 truck per Mad Max car, maybe sometimes 2 trucks, but mostly 1 trucks. So they're good at shooting down those drones, those Palantir drones. Yeah, I'd say the same thing for the civilians. So there's not enough trucks to escort civilians. Civilians drive on their own, so that becomes a whole different issue. The areas I used to drive in that you had some chance of getting hit by artillery, but for the most part, they're pretty good roads. Nah, they're closed now. I've got some relatives living in Gorlovka, and some relatives living in Issanovata. You couldn't go down the Debaltseve Road. It's closed. They had, just between Gorlovka and Issanovata, they had 6 civilian cars and occupants killed in less than a week from the American drones. That's just the reality. I mean, terror. The Ukrainians are losing, so they've gone into full terror. In fact, my wife sent me. Let me see where this happened. It's a massacre from Zaporozhye, Takmak. Ukrainian / American British drones hit a market, an open air market, and just shredded people. There's 5 dead so far, 18 wounded.
This was today.
This was today. This would just happen. Before that, we've had several buses hit. They're particularly got a hard on for targeting Belarusian buses. I don't know if Lukashenko is going to send him another harshly worded letter like he did last time. Obviously, the harshly worded letter of protest did not have the harshly worded effect on the narco goblin and his crew. They've hit 2 more buses. They wounded 2 drivers on one of those buses. So they're going off. They're really trying to expand this war. I think more than likely the Americans had to talk with them not to start a full war with Belarus, which would mean another full war with Russia, which would mean Russia having to declare war finally. And if that happened, it means the military would have all restraints released, and then it could really show Kiev what it means to be at war, because these degenerates don't seem to understand that in the Kievan government. and those that support them. Why is Russia going after? First of all, why is Ukraine going after Russian gas stations? For the most part, they're not. Those are targets of opportunity to kill civilians. The drone operators will strike gas stations. They're not striking the gas station itself so much. They're usually striking a car that's refueling up, trying to kill the civilians, and they do it almost on by daily basis. Again, they're not really damaging the gas station, but they are killing civilians because that's their goal. Why is Russia targeting Ukrainian gas stations? Well, the Ukrainians switched to portable drone launch sites. Basically, they took all these light trucks, diesel and gasoline trucks, gazelles, box trucks, and in the box they've put 2 launchers for 2 drones. So they drive up toward the border or the line of contact, pop 2 drones out, and they're off. These are the big drones that can go deep. No, that can get up to Moscow, and definitely into the places like Voronezh. And they'll do dozens of these trucks launching these drones. Well, Russia started hitting any possible parking spaces for these trucks. But if they're in any of the cities, they'll be hiding in somebody's underground parking lot. It's pretty hard to find them, or in some garage. What's not hard to find is their fueling points, because they're using the regular gas stations. And Russia's systematically, for the last week and a half, has been dismantling all of their gas stations in these brief frontal territories to a decent depth. Yesterday, there were some hits on western Sumy, took out 3 gas stations on one road. And these, they're not aiming for the civilians. They're aiming for the gas station. That's where they often do it in the middle of the night. So gas stations are closed for the night, and they get a visit from Mr. Iskandar. Usually it becomes a very hot party after Mr. Iskandar visits. So there was one video where some guy in the middle of the night decided he wanted to go fuel up, and one gas station blows up to his right as he's driving, and he's cussing and he's screaming and and as he's driving for like another 1.5 kilometers, and the next one blows up on his left. So he got lucky, at least he didn't pull into any, but they look pretty closed anyways. So that's the situation between the two. Kyiv, there has been changes. I think the party of war is winning out, the hardliners. By war, I mean not just to prolong the war, but to actually get hard, take the velvet gloves on, put on the spiked gauntlets. The party, the faction that wanted to go back to 2012, and we can then go, back to shop. Let's make a deal, any deal, just like I make a deal, so I can go back to shopping in Paris, and my wife can go back to to Monaco. That team, and this is, I would say, that was mostly the financial economics team, faction, different representatives, central bank, other people like that. They, from what I can see right now, from my less than the most advantageous point, they seem to have lost. They've lost the local power struggle for now, at least, and they've been put in the back seat. And things are expanding, and they're going to continue expanding. Now, I'll give you an example of the things that were hit in Kyiv this last time around. LCC Radionics. This is a company that produces cruise missile control components for the Flamingo. Athlon Avia LLC, scientific products company, drone manufacturer. Antonov Serial Production. So they produce airplanes, which they're not exactly producing much of. Oh, and drones. Kyiv Radio Plant LLC, Trimin, Ukraine. They produce sighting systems for armored vehicles, so lenses, periscopes, things like that, and thus they produce the camera equipment, camera lenses for drones. Kyiv 25, which is they're both a software house and They produce storage hardware for Lima Electronics warfare units. MLP Chaika, it's a logistics center that was destroyed. That one of the biggest logistics centers. This is just a short list of targets that are hit. I mean, Kiev is a big city, 2.5 million people. This is a normal population. It's and the population has swollen because men have ran to Kiev, as Kiev was a nature reserve for the male species in Ukraine. That's now being harvested. And one of the things you notice, this came out about a little over a month ago. Kiev, Odessa, Nikolaev, other cities suddenly got surrounded by belts of defensive lines. I'm not sure if we discussed this before or not. I don't remember if we did. So barbed wire, dragon's teeth, anti-tank ditches, minefields, all the roads under block post control. And I was on Evening with Solovyov, and it was like, yeah, see, they know the Russian army is going to break through. Well, the Russian army is breaking through, but the point is no matter what, the rate of advance because of drones is slow. Even if you break through, you're talking less than 10 kilometers a day at best on movement, which gives any of these cities more enough time to put up defenses. Second of all, these defenses without oversight are pointless. Well, no, maybe not pointless, but they're just a pain in the arse for any enemy approaching, because unless the reason you put obstacles like this up is because you have them overwatched by indirect and direct fire. So while they're trying to clear the minefield and they're trying to get fill in the hole and move the dragon's teeth out of the way, they're being shot at. Now, Ukraine doesn't have that kind of manpower. So what that means is a series of obstacles like that for the Russian military may be a 1.5 to 2 hour delay. One time. And then you got a corridor for everybody else to go in behind you, or make a couple of these kinds of corridors. So why would they do that? Well, like I said, Kiev, these cities are nature preserves for the male species, for the male of the species, and now they're being harvested. So what you should Ukraine is one big open air concentration camp, but it's a big open air concentration camp with plenty of places to hide. The Ukrainian meat machine has run out of men in the small towns, medium towns, villages. They're pretty much depopulated the male population. Most of them are in the grave. So what do you do now? You start looking around, and where do you have the big reserves? You have Kiev, you have Odessa, you have cities like that. Well, the problem is Ukraine is a concentration camp, open air concentration camp, but it's big, and the men started running out of the city. So these aren't defensive lines; these are concentration camps, ghettos inside the big concentration camp. Try driving across a field when you have landmines somewhere out there, plus concertina wire, plus dragon teeth. Try getting across there on foot when, again, you have concertina wire, then you have to get across a minefield. That limits your mobility. You can't drive out the roads because everything's under guard post. They're going to be going, papers, please. Or better yet, stacks of cash you want out. That's the reality of it. So what Ukraine has done, the Ukrainian government, is it's basically closed the pen around the nature reserves, and now they're harvesting. So that's the situation we have right now. I know I went slightly off.
No, well, if again, as you see, Ukraine is being hit much harder, and as in most of this war, whenever there's escalation, including on NATO's side, it's usually the retaliation comes against Ukraine. But now that the pressure is also mounting on hitting something in Europe, how do you think? Well, what do you think Russia might consider? Because we saw this article now, I forgot where it was. It might have been Washington Post. They wrote this article that, or maybe also British media, that the Russians were planning an attack on Poland, and but it was apparently around Kaliningrad, which wouldn't make that much sense. But that being said, there obviously are those in Russia who are now pushing for restoring its deterrent by hitting a European NATO country. But how essentially, what would be the logic here that is trying to hit and the adversary hard enough to back away from the Ukraine war, but not so much that one triggers a nuclear war? And even this is the case, if this can't be controlled and it ends up in a like all-out direct war, what do you see such a war looking like? Sorry, that's a double question, but
No problem. Well, first of all, the Chinese, and I've got a lot of hope for this equipment. The Chinese demonstrated in their last big military parade 3 drone suppression units. These were microwave-based EMP devices, big antennas, big radars to track down. And the antenna is just one big block, like the old radar systems used to be in World War II, just miniaturized to one truck, a decently sized truck, about 2.5-ton truck. Running off 15 kilowatts, up to 5 kilometers in distance, and it's an area suppression weapon. Right? There's lots of stuff that kills drones. Some of the best is lasers. Sure, you can half a second and melt right through that plastic piece of crap that's flying 5 kilometers away. Great. Problem is once they figure out where that laser just came from, because unlike in space, in the air, you can, if it's a high enough intensity laser, you can actually see the damn thing, especially if it's, once they figure out where it's coming from, there'll be 40 drones flying at it, and they'll be on a very wide frontage, height and width. So here's the problem. Drone laser systems only service one target at a time. Even if it takes half a second or a second to kill that target, another second or two to reorient to the next target, and power it up for another 1 or 2, 3 seconds to get enough energy back up off the generator to do another impulse. So even if you're hitting a possible rate of one drone, say every 10 seconds, you have 30, 40 drones closing in at 140 kilometers to 220 kilometers per hour from a few kilometers away, you're done. It's just that simple. And again, you're back to the $5,000 drone just killed the $10 million or $3 million piece of equipment. So again, that every system we have right now is first and foremost a single target servicing system. You need an area suppression piece of equipment, and that's what the Chinese have demonstrated and field tested. Have they combat tested? Of course not. We haven't seen that yet on the Russian battlefield. Where else are they going to combat test it? That's a lot of hope, because if you put enough of these units together, especially when you have artillery overmatch like Russia does to the EU in whole, and Ukraine in particular, what you're going to have is you could bring back, at least limitedly, you can bring back maneuver warfare. There's these possibilities. So that's a very big. How would this war look like? If this equipment comes in, say by the end of summer, this war could look radically different. Obviously, because now you've opened up at least on some frontage fast-moving maneuver warfare, which makes, by the way, drone operators very, very problematic, because they operate, they're best operating when the front is more or less stable. Even if there's a small Russian breakthrough or Ukrainian breakthrough, drone operators can handle it because it's infantry and they're not moving that fast. Now, what to strike? Again, I can't talk for Vladimir Vladimirovich because I haven't been invited to any of his sessions. And if I was, I still wouldn't be able to say, just out of military censorship. But from my own opinion, what have I done? The 16 drones that took out the entire block, because you saw my video for Starobelsk. It's not just those 2 buildings. They took out everything around them. They took out an arts high school or junior school arts center across the street. They took out a private house across the street. They took out a restaurant that was next door. They missed a few. One of the shell holes from one of these drones was 4 meters wide, 2 meters deep. We climbed, one of our guys climbed down there, measured. So those drones were all made in Italy. Yeah, made in Italy stickers. You'd think the Italians would be at least a little smarter, at least take their names off of it. Plausible deniability. This is one of those moments where you take that to the UN, you show that, and gentlemen, on the screen is our Oreshnik that's now arriving at the manufacturing facility that manufactured these terror weapons. Please watch. That's one way to do it. I would do that. Obviously, right now that moment has passed because that's something you would have to have used relatively quickly. Other place.
Yeah, sorry.
The other place that would make a lot of logical sense are two other places. You can hit the British, for example, in Cyprus, because you're not hitting NATO territory per se, and it's not in Britain on the main islands. Otherwise, me personally, I would take out a tanker, a Russian flag tanker. I have it break down somewhere to the northwest of the UK with a full contingent of Marines with man-pad anti-aircraft systems, at least one heavy machine gun. And somewhere trailing behind that would be an attack submarine. And when the British come running over to try to land and pirate the oil ship, give them one warning and then open fire. Take out the helicopter, take out the crew, and if those boats, the cutters, start firing on the tanker, the submarine sinks them both. You've just created a major casualty event for the British in neutral waters. You've taken prisoners as pirates. Now, shall we tribunal and execute them, or are you going to talk about it? Because, by the way, they're pirates. They're grabbing in neutral waters. They're grabbing a foreign ship under a foreign flag. That's piracy. Or do you prefer declaration of war now? And then we could just start bombarding London into Gaza. That's the position you put the British in. And until something like that happens, they're not smart enough people to take this war seriously. It's a game to them.
Well, it looks like we could be heading somewhere around that direction because the rhetoric seems to have shifted now. I saw this interview with Putin where he not only referred to getting very close to finishing off Donbass, but then he also included Novorossiya, which would then include Nikolaev and Odessa. I thought that was interesting.
Kharkov.
Yeah, and Kharkov. Yeah, that too.
And Poltava.
Fair enough. But then we see also Medvedev, he's making this point that, Finland is now on the nuclear targeting list after they changed their law and can host the nuclear weapons. That seems kind of predictable. But also Maria Zakharova, who made this comment that these Russian pranksters, they've essentially exposed that Estonia is now was involved in the attacks on St. Petersburg. Now, the reason this is interesting is once you put that out there, you yes, on one hand, one creates the case for why it would be legitimate, for example, to strike Estonia. But once you put it out there, it also puts a lot of pressure on the government. That is, if you recognize that Estonians have attacked Russia, it's very hard not to go up that escalation ladder. Just, well, they attacked us, you admit it, and then do nothing. I mean, then it would be better to pretend as if you weren't attacked, that there was no evidence. So all of this is, of course, I don't want to read too much into it, but it just, one gets the impression that something is shifting, that, that they're prepared to take a harder line now against at least Europeans. I was wondering if you see some of the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this can't go on the way it goes on. I've said on your show before on different other shows, we're heading into either a conventional war or a nuclear war. There is no in between. The question with the conventional war is how much of Europe is planning on dying off at a slow rate. If we go to nuclear war, well, all of Europe is going to be dying off at a very fast rate. So that becomes a question. I'm sorry, not Norway. Finland is not on the nuclear list yet because American nuclear bombs, and they're literally bombs, gravity bombs haven't been sent there yet. They will be, and and the second world economy collapsing to the armpit of Europe again. Finland is well on its way to becoming also a nuclear strike target for first strike or any other or retaliatory strike. I mean, I guess the Finns, they don't want to just be the armpit of Europe again, which they're very rapidly becoming, which they were before the Russian Empire took them over. And under Russian Empire, Finns were taught to were given schooling. Helsinki was built from a stinking fishing village, and Finns, for the first time, were actually running Finland in maybe 1,000 years, and part of the Russian upper classes. This was the armpit of Europe, probably competing only with maybe what I know, Albania, those types of areas. Finland was absolutely the armpit of Europe, and Finland grew up, got rich, particularly rich during the Cold War by staying neutral. It tied its economy to the Russian economy, particularly after after the Cold War. And they decided to commit economic suicide, which they've successfully done. They're slowly they're hanging off a rope and slowly strangling to death. They prefer to do it slowly, more painfully. I guess they're masochistic that way. But now they decided, hey, that's not enough. Let's become nuclear targets. Okay, you can't fix stupid. Well, stupid sometimes fixes itself. It gets itself killed. But apparently you can't fix stupid. People have tried rationally speaking to the Finns, but they're dead set on it. They want to die, and they want to die spectacularly. Well, okay. I mean, these are the same people that are trying to put American bases right across the border from the Russian border. These are the same people who were allowed Ukrainian drones to fly through. And I guarantee you, if Vova and Lexus called up Stubby and got to talk to him, he probably spilled the beans the same way. That we're arming and we're launching those drones for the Ukrainians. I would not be surprised to hear that from these guys. They're that stupid. They're quite literally the knuckle dragging inbred. I mean, Stubbs looks like he's inbred. Knuckle dragging inbred mouth breathers of European aristocracy. Way too much pure blood. And this is the people you get running Europe now. But okay, I mean, if the people aren't overthrowing them, they must be liking it. Otherwise, they would overthrow them.
Well, let me ask a last question here, though, because, well, the way you frame it now, it sounds as if, you see war almost being unavoidable. Is either nuclear or conventional, but it also seems that Russia now believes that the Europeans are preparing for war, largely because that's exactly what the European leaders are saying and also doing in terms of arming themselves. But how do you see the possibility of Russia actually striking first? If you think war is unavoidable, why wait until you get punched first? I saw during this interview with Putin, I think he referred to the Operation Barbarossa, and that's an interesting comparison to the current situation. I was just wondering, do you see this as a possibility that Russia becomes convinced that the war is coming, and it will essentially then take ownership and decide when it starts and how it will be fought?
Barbarossa Stalin had a very big misconception. He believed that war could be avoided. He believed that the British were trying to instigate the war, and to a degree they were, but war was never avoidable. Hitler was dead set on it. So at this point, Stalin, for example, refused his generals, so came to him 6 days prior, said, "Let us mobilize, at least partially mobilize." Said, "No movements, because that would be used by the British to instigate conflict with the Germans." Yeah, that not the smartest move, obviously. When the night before, the 22nd at 4 a.m., 22nd of June at 4 a.m., when Barbarossa kicked off, About 12 hours earlier, you had a Polish communist swim across the Vistula and go up and say, the Germans are about to attack. And he got pulled in by some military intelligence types, and 4 in the morning, they were still questioning him. So, when he's telling you they're about to attack, well, they've attacked. This is a slightly different situation. Two, why would you absorb an attack? Well, or let the enemy strike first. There are reasons to do this. One, if you're very convinced you can absorb that attack, with and come back, there could be two things that happen. One, the enemy is in for a shock when they give their best blow, and you go, yeah, okay. That's what we saw with Iran. The Americans struck with everything they had. When the dust clears, the Iranians are just shooting back, and they're going, is that all you've got? Seriously. And the Americans at which point are looking at their warehouse and going, damn, that is all we've got. We've got pretty much nothing left. And we can't manufacture anything because our economy is basically on manufacturers, a second world power at best, with components that come from other countries. So yeah, that would be a reason to wait and let the enemy strike, because you can take the blow, and you can reverse it, because that also generates sympathy. Particularly if those countries they're sympathetic, would then be more easily persuaded, or it would be easier for them to come to your assistance on a moral high ground, which the Iranians did quite a bit. Russia had a strike when it struck, because the Ukrainians were getting ready to start genociding Donetsk and Lugansk, and they were sitting right outside of a little bit out of Donetsk. I'm sorry, Lugansk, but they were sitting inside the western edges of Donetsk. There would have been a massive genocide. That's why Russia invoked Article 51, the right to protect. And by the way, for the Germans, if you don't understand, and the Italians, yeah, and the Hungarians, and the Finns, just so you understand, there's a separate article in the UN Charter that allows the UN permanent members to come wipe your nations out as long if there is any Nazism, a rebirth of Nazism in your countries. Go read the charter. You'd be surprised what goes into that. So yes, there's that moment too. If Merz really wants to go ahead and get his gray uniform on, then we can go ahead and start demolishing Germany, quite legally, to the very charter. By the way, Germany also is now signed as a member of the UN. So there's that point. Why you would absorb a blow in the case of Europe, I would say a strike on Italy, for example, or an ambush on the open seas of the British pirates would be a very good escalation with some amount of control still available. As for Russia striking Poland, yeah, that's as likely as Russia going to the moon in the next 2 days. Why would we want to? We got everything we need right now on the land. Or better yet, it's as likely as Russia annexing Western Europe. Why? Why would we ever want to do that? Poland, getting in the way of the narco goblin destroying relations with his backers and neighbors is just too rich. I mean, why would we ever want to get in the way with it? Look, who suggests this? The very people that are afraid that Poland is now gone off course. It's off the sheet of music. It's on a new sheet of music. And it's a nationalist sheet of music. And we don't like that new sheet of music because all of a sudden Poland has said Melnik is one Nazi too far. I'm not sure why Bandera-Shihevich weren't one Nazi too far, but apparently Melnik was finally that Nazi too far. That old bastard that died of old age in Luxembourg, mass murdering psychopath. But was allowed to live the rest of his life in comfort. So he gets reburied, and the Ukrainians started naming their units after Nazi formations and Nazis. Oh, except for they already were doing that anyways. So the Poles, maybe it was Novorossiysk was just waiting for an excuse. That's also possible. And the Ukrainians gave him the excuse. Well, it's not only that Zelensky's told them to bugger the hell off. We'll name we'll name our heroes anywhere we want, or in our units, but it's his runaway commanders that have now started threatening to start murdering Poles. They're now directly threatening to invade Poland and start hitting Poland with drones. And if you look at Azov, the Corps now, it's no longer battalion or brigade. It's now Corps. Azov published their black flag, and on it in red is an outline of Super Ukraine, which also happens to include 1/3 of Poland. Yeah, if you think the Poles didn't notice that one, you're kidding yourself. So of course the Poles have noticed that. The relations have gone to hell, and they're already bearing fruits. Novorossiysk said, those MiGs aren't coming. Don't hold your breath. So that's a wing of MiG-29s that Poland was getting ready to hand over to Ukraine. They're no longer going to be heading over there. So again, why get rid of somebody like Zelensky? Why attack Poland? This is the perfect situation. Any move from the Russian side like that would be just plain silly. When it comes to places like Italy, if you want to make an example of one of these countries, taking out the manufacturing facility that created the drones that murdered Russian children is a very good basis for the reason you've done this. And Italy may find it very hard to try to go to war on such a footing. Meloni is not as popular as most people think. She's also totally betrayed the conservative movement. And by the way, flooded Italy over the last 2 years with migrants, mass flooding of migrants. So her days may be numbered, finally. So, if you do a exemplary attack on that manufacturing facility that created those drones, that possibly will avoid going to war and may get you the political results you want. Estonia also has this problem that almost half its populations are Russians on Russian historical land. Narva, that region, has been Russian since the 9th century. The Bolsheviks started drawing nice little new lines and included Russian lands to Estonia. Just get them bigger, get them another big city. Who cares? We still rule from Moscow. Well, that's same mentality that created the problem with Crimea. So Estonia, the Russians there, they're not even second-class citizens. They're not citizens at all. On their own homeland that they've occupied for the last 1,100 years, they're not citizens. They're basically legal residents with a gray passport. So Estonia is not only again, these, by the way, the 3 Baltic countries, most people don't understand this, especially they're in the EU, they all have SS parades once a year, about summerish, in the summertime, that are government sponsored, paid for, with government officials coming to talk to the veterans of the SS. The very people the defenders of Estonia, the very people that gave their oath to Adolf, first and foremost. Estonia may be an extremely, extremely good example. One, because there's a lot of Russians there that need to be returned home, and territories that need to be returned home that were artificially separated by the Bolsheviks. And 2, because they want to fight. Apparently, they want to fight. Let them taste what fighting means.
Yeah. Well, on that note, thank you very much for coming on. And yeah, it's like I said, something is definitely changing now. So
Yes.
I see the same now with the Russians guiding or assist. What's a good word for it? Escorting their vessels with military warships. We see guns mounted on civilian ships to prevent this piracy. So the rhetoric shifting, the heavy attacks. So across the board, something appears to have shifted, and let's see how this plays out. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Glenn. Always a pleasure. And maybe we'll have some good news, like positive things, rainbows, butterflies, apples, and berries to discuss one day.
You know what? This I started this podcast because I thought my main research focus is on Greater Eurasia and how the Russians are reorienting their economy to the east. I mean, at least 10 of my books have been focused on this issue, and that's what I was teaching, all of this. But oh God, this is so depressing. The past year, hardly only war. It's yeah. I'm looking forward to also academia becoming slightly more boring. That would be delightful. So
Well, I think the problem is a lot of academia is very boring. They're just ignoring everything you're talking about, other people are talking about, I'm talking about. They just ignore it. They have a very narrow bandwidth that they're responding to. And unfortunately, it's a group formation. So, all the details are boring to them. It's just the Russians are evil and that's it.
yeah. Now I remember that when I first started working on it, because I thought it was fascinating. The Chinese, the Russians, the Indians, all of them are creating this new tech centers. They're creating their own supply chains. They're developing their own physical transportation corridors, their own development banks. They're de-dollarizing, all new payment system. And then when you turn to the media and academia, it's like it's just a sideshow. It doesn't mean that much, but yeah, here we are. Anyways,
Russia
any final
is an
thoughts?
example. Russia just launched its first photonic chip factory. The Chinese launched one a couple months ago. Photonic chips, you want to talk about crashing the AI bubble, particularly the AI construction bubble that America is built on these days. Photonic chips, because they're not etchings in silicon, they're not electronics. They use photons, light. They don't build up nearly as much heat. The capabilities are much greater. And the Chinese ones, they're planning on producing 12,000 of these chips by the end of the year. I'm not sure how big the Russian chip manufacturing is going to be on the photonic side, but they're talking about 1,000 times faster than the best NVIDIA chip. That may be a big bit of an exaggeration, but even if it's 10 times faster, that's a massive breakthrough. So if Russia and China are now going to go into photonic chips, and the U.S. is nowhere near that, haven't invested heavily into current technology instead of more advanced technologies, that's a huge bubble burst.
Definitely. Well, thanks again.